At the bottom, you can see the word F-U-C-K is used 114 times throughout this book. Shit is used 87 times. There's 31 sexual words in 13 different chapters. The committee unanimously decided to keep these books in the library. Unanimously.
So there are some handouts that we're handing you, and some of them are graphic, very graphic. But I think it's important that, you know, for a while we were blacking everything out where you couldn't really see what was being said, and you need to see the ugliness. And you need to see exactly what these books are saying, and the artwork that accompanies it. So Janice Danforth has kind of taken the bull by the horns. She is with Moms for Liberty. It's a new organization that has started up within the past year, and they are taking off like wildfire, because these are concerns that all parents are going to have. And so please join me. And we've asked the sheriff to be here as well, because there are some issues that need to be addressed as far as, you know, can we get in trouble if we were to read these stories out in a public park? You know, could we get in trouble? And so we've brought these two together, and I'm going to tell you, the sheriff is he's been a great sport, because when I kind of sent him a text and told him what it was going to be, he said, well, this is a first. That's right. So we're breaking him in, and he'll help us with this issue. So please join me in welcoming Janice Danforth and Sheriff Vic Regalado.
And are you going to do my PowerPoint?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Get back over there.
Okay, so while she's doing that, I'll just quickly introduce. My name is Janice Danforth, and I started the chapter here in Tulsa County for Moms for Liberty. We are the first and so far the only chapter in Oklahoma, but we are across now 35 states. We just got 2 new ones here recently. We are growing, like Rhonda said, like wildfire. We started in Florida by 2 moms that were on a board, didn't like what they were seeing, wanted change, started change thinking it would just be their school district. The school district neighbor said, well, we like what you're doing, and it rolled from there. And so that's where we are today. They started Moms for Liberty last January, so we've only been in place for just over a year, which is crazy when you look at it that way. So they are an amazing organization. I'm proud that I get to be called the chapter chair of that, because they really are dynamite conservative group. We are bipartisan in the sense that we want all parents, all people to realize that there's a lot of dangers going on in the school system, and we need both sides to realize that. But conservative thought is where we are, and which is what we are here for today. So next slide. So we are what our motto, they have a motto every year, which they just started last year. So. But the year of the parent. And I think all of us are seeing that that's the case throughout social media, news. Governor DeSantis is a good example of that. He actually put one of our moms on the state school board in Florida, one of the chapter chairs for Moms for Liberty. So that was a really great thing. He's an awesome advocate for parental rights. And so I'm hoping his interest in that and his passion for that will bleed across other conservative states, including ours here in Oklahoma. So school library books are an issue. So this is actually what got me involved in Moms for Liberty in the first place. My son had, well, not the books, but just the issues in the school. My son had some issues with propaganda in his government class in Bixby. And so I started questioning things and kind of moving forward. And then I started following Moms for Liberty, saw actually this book that I'm going to talk to you about, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. So I started investigating that. I thought, no way this book is in Bixby. There's no way. I went and looked. Yeah, it was. So then I got really mad. So I started doing an investigation. So this is one book of many, many that are inappropriate, and I will actually in the next slide show you. But this is all the schools, these are all the schools in the area for Tulsa County where this book is located. And the next slide, we have a great system that is called gofullit.com. You can put any location of schools, of what state you are. It'll then type in the school you want. You can see there we have Oklahoma and then Hale Junior High, and then it goes over directly into the school library. Every school here has access to that. The elementary ones sometimes don't have that access, but the upper schools, the junior, middle, or high schools do. You can go in and look for books. So if you see of a book that's being advertised on social media and you think, I don't like that book, I'm going to go see if it's in my school, you can do that by this system. So this is an excellent resource for parents and anyone interested in what's going on in the schools. And then from there, there's other websites that you can go to kind of see what that book is about. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great avenues for finding out if a book's appropriate or not, in the sense of they give you resources, but they don't really go deep into it. You have to really do your own digging, which is what I did with me and Earl, and was disgusted with what I saw. Next slide. So here's an excerpt as an example. In this particular passage, he talks about eating pussy through this whole passage and goes into pretty good detail. At the bottom, you can see the word F-U-C-K is used 114 times throughout this book. Shit is used 87 times. There's 31 sexual words in 13 different chapters. This book, while has kind of a silly, fun take to it for children this age, the material is not fun. It is not great. So unfortunately, this author, who has a great way to get kids interested in reading, which I love that about him, he really just took advantage and kind of just sunk it all by adding all this ridiculousness into it. Next slide. So when finding a book, what does a parent do? So I actually took this book and another one to Bixby High School and told them, I don't like these books. I brought it to the principal's attention. So that would be your first step, is finding the book, saying I don't like it, and you can go contact the principal and let them know. From there, they'll have you fill out a form about the book that you can submit for it to be reviewed. They will form a committee. This committee then has about 60 days, and this varies depending on the school district. They're all a little bit different. I have gathered information through Tulsa County. They're pretty similar. Then you'll be contacted after they make a decision. In my case, they actually invited me in. I brought a couple of big guns with me on that meeting, and they let me know that the committee unanimously decided to keep these books in the library. Unanimously. So at that point, I had a decision to make, was to say I contest this decision. So you would have the ability to do that, and you have a certain amount of time to do that. In my case, before I actually went to where it goes to the board, the superintendent of Bixby actually said he wanted to meet with me before that. And I brought my friend Jenny with me, and we met with him and the associate superintendent with the intention that we were going to create a review committee. That's what we finalized in that 2-hour meeting, that we would have a better review of what's coming in. Then I met with him again, and he said, never mind, I changed my mind, we're not going to do that. So I had to then submit to the board, which I did. Then they had more time. So this process took from February to November. November to October to February. Sorry, I was switching that. So I submitted everything initially in October. February is when the board actually had their special meeting. So this took a very long time. So if you can imagine why this is not successful, because it takes that long just for them to review 2 books. It is completely ridiculous. So at this meeting, we have the opportunity. They gave me 15 minutes to speak. They gave the school 15 minutes to speak, and then the board could ask questions. So at the end of that, it was, again, a long meeting. It was 2 hours. On one book, it was unanimous to keep, and that one had a detailed rape in it, and they all agreed to keep that book. That was 13 Reasons Why. The me and Earl and the dying girl, 2 out of the 5 board members voted to remove it because one of them specifically said, I can't even say these words out loud here with a room full of adults. How can I okay this to stay in the library at a school? So praise him for that. And the other man did as well. The 3 women that are on the board at Bixby agreed to keep the book. So it was majority win, so the book stays and cannot be relooked at for 3 years. So why does this process not work? Here's some of the reasons why. They stacked their committee initially. They chose who was on the committee to decide if the book should be initially pulled or not. It was the principal of the high school was on the committee. The librarian was on the committee. The assistant superintendent who chooses curriculum was on the committee. They chose 2 teachers and they asked 2 parents. So everyone that was on that committee, they chose. I acknowledge to them that was stacked, and I did not get nice words back at me for saying such a thing. How dare I? But it was. So that's one problem is you're going to see anytime you try to go against them, they're going to make sure you fail. And they tried to do that. Another problem is OSSBA, which is Oklahoma State School Board Association. They create all the policies for schools. They also train the school board. So all these policies are in place that the school oversees, and they also train the school board. So in case you can't tell, that's quite a conflict of interest. You're having the same group do both sides. So that creates a lot of twisted idea. The superintendent is another problem, and I'm not shy about saying this. I've said it many a times. I've said it to Rob Miller himself. They put pressure on these school board members to vote the way they want them to. They don't want to see a divided vote. They are pressured to vote yes on everything, no matter what. In fact, in the meeting that I had with them, where I had 15 minutes to talk, and then the assistant superintendent had 15 minutes to talk, Mr. Miller actually started butting in because he saw that 2 of the board members were going to vote no, and he tried to sway them and change their vote. And I actually then spoke up and said, no way, this is ridiculous. You can't come in here and start trying to sway a vote. And anyway, so it ended up, they didn't get swayed, but they don't like that. And then another big problem is the American Library Association. So they are the biggest enemy of the parent. They are the enemy of our children, and we need the ALA removed as a resource and a guide for school librarians, period. End of story. They need to go. There is no reason that they have to be the guide for these schools. They are something that we choose as a school to vote or to pay for, to use them. There's no regulations for that. There's no government. You have to use them. It is by choice. Next slide. So the American Library Association does not have the protection of innocence of our children on their agenda at all. Period. And you'll see what I mean. If you can go back, sorry. So they want access, no matter your age, no matter your sex, no matter your anything, they want and think you should have access to every book that exists. So no matter your age, they think you should have access to it. So all these books that we are trying to put boundaries on, they say we're banning. What we're doing is saying they're not appropriate for children, and we know they're not appropriate. They know they're not appropriate, but they have an agenda. Our agenda is to protect kids and have them be innocent. Their agenda is something completely different. And they have what's called their Library Bill of Rights. They almost actually equate it to our Constitution. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, okay, next slide. So selecting materials on controversial topics, this comes directly from their website. They look at minors and American society, that these basically are 2 problems. American society, we have like a crazy thought in how we think we should be protecting our kids, and these create challenges for school libraries. So can you imagine that? The thought of American society, that we are actually a part of the problem here. So ironically, they use this PICO, the School Board versus PICO case, which is a Supreme Court case. And I actually use this in my argument with the Bixby School Board. They say minors do have First Amendment rights in schools, which is true, they do. However, Justice Brennan actually uses this case to say This needs to go back to the schools. This shouldn't even be at the Supreme Court. You know your school, you know your communities, you make that decision, and that should be granted there, and it should never come here. Next slide. This is a new, this is going to be the new president of the ALA sitting right here. She's a Marxist. Not only is she a Marxist, she's an avowed, proud to be Marxist. She is going to be running the American Library Association. She's the one who's running training librarians in schools, and they have access to our kids. They will be brainwashing our children more than they already are today. She is proud of it. She's a proud lesbian Marxist. And this is a problem. And if you don't see this as a problem, then we're, like Unwokeable said this morning, we have 5 years. This is one of the reasons why we have 5 years. Next slide. So here's the actual truth. Freedom of speech does not include the right to make or distribute obscene materials. This was another Supreme Court case. Those are the definitions of obscene. So you can see that if we're looking at these books, like the Earl book I just handed out, or if you want any of the materials you have in front of you right now, these would be described, great descriptions of obscene. We can take that and know then that freedom of speech does not cover that. The Board of Education versus PICO is limiting what can come in the library is no longer under the First Amendment. That would be saying, which is what I suggested to Bixby, was that we have a better curriculum review committee, that what's coming in, because then once the book's in the library, then you have to start getting a little more why is the reason you're taking it out. But to bring it in the first place does not at all affect the First Amendment. So that is why the library doesn't want that. They don't want a better curriculum because they know that that's a place where we can get. And if we're looking at vulgarity as another word, Justice Brennan actually in that case specifically stated vulgarity is not covered under our First Amendment and protection. Next slide. So if we limit the removal of books, but it is not limited or extended to acquisition of books. So we can decide to limit what books are coming in, and there's no problem breaking the First Amendment. There's no lawsuit that could be had. It's saying here's our stipulation for the books based on our community, based on whatever standards we want to come up with. Then we limit the sexually provocative or vulgar books that are coming through. It is not unconstitutional. We would need pervasively vulgar or educationally unsuitable. They're not protected. And so I think you could all agree that that would fall under that category. Next slide. So in Oklahoma, we are blessed. We are one of a few states that actually has a parental bill of rights. Not all of them do. Florida is in the process of creating one, but we do have that. And I brought this up as well to Bixby. It's interesting. They really don't like the law when it goes against them. They like to use the law in their favor, but they don't like to follow these. And unfortunately, there's nobody putting pressure on them to follow the law either. And this is another issue that we can kind of talk more about. So we have the right to direct the education of the minor child, the right to their upbringing and their moral or religious beliefs. So if we have no way to know what's in these books, in our libraries, in the school, then they are breaking this parental bill of rights, because I have no way to know as a mom unless I go read every single book that's in the library. There's no rating system. There's no way for me to know. I would literally have to read every book before I go. And in fact, one of the books that I contested, my son had read and told me about it after I told him about the Earl book. And he said, "Oh, Mom, I have a worse book." And it was describing a rape. And he quit reading it midway once he read the rape because he knew it was not right. But there's no way for you to know. There is absolutely no way for you to know. Okay, next slide. So we also have an obscenity law here in Oklahoma. We're one of 7 states that has this law. This doesn't seem to matter either. We get to protect our children, our minors, with obscenity law, and this covers materials. This covers books that are in our libraries, and yet we're not being able to utilize this. In fact, I asked the district attorney here in Tulsa County, can we go after schools, administrators, librarians, knowing this law exists and they're purposely breaking it. They literally approved books. So to me, it's like, there's an obscenity law. I just told them. They're approving to keep these books in, knowing it's full of obscenity. And he said, there's really nothing I can do. And I was like, what? So if there's nothing we can do on the legal side, then they will continue to put these books in. And there's no stopping them when they know the law is not being taken seriously. And the reason he said not that it's not legally justifiable is just that there's too much going on. This would never hold up in court. You're never going to find a jury that's going to convict a librarian or what have you. So it just creates something that's too big. But we have to look at this as this is a big thing because these are our kids and it's our society. And if we don't take charge, we are going to lose society. We are losing it to Marxism, and it is not a joke, and it is not a conspiracy theory. Next slide. So what options do we have? So here's 2 options that I came up with when I met with Bixby was a material review committee and a rating system. The material review committee to me is the best option because it limits what's coming in. You're really seeing what's in there. We were going to come up with a committee of teachers with parents, some administrators, have a good balance of people. So you're getting both sides. You're able to really talk about kind of a system. We would do kind of a jury selection way to do it so that it was fair. But that was not liked in the end. So that was a no, but I still feel like that's the best option. Rating system is another option like they do in the movies. And you can stay here. This is fine. Go to the next one because this shows that rating system. So the Motion Picture Association does a rating system, as we all know, on movies. They're ranging from not rated all the way up, to G, PG, PG-13, etc. They chose to do rating system by no governance. It is completely voluntary. You don't have to even rate them if you don't want to, if you make a movie. It's completely their choice. Of course, now this has been going on for a lot of years, so they all do it. The greatest part about it is the committee is made up of parents. So all of our movies are decided by a committee of parents. And this is why they do it, because they don't want any sway in there. So they don't have directors. They don't have anyone that's working on the films or behind the scenes or big wigs in there, actors, whatever. They don't want it to be swayed. They want to say, this is what a parent likes or doesn't like. This is how they would view it. They came up with their curriculum for it, and they've stuck with it. And that has allowed parents to then make a decision what they feel is best based on the movie. They know, and we all have done that. If you know it's rated R, you know, okay, I don't want my kid watching this. End of story. You don't have to go to it. Why are we not having something like this on our books? Why do we not have some way for us to know that there is something in these books that should not be read by a student? So the ALA does not support this. They believe by putting a rating system in, you are basically creating bias, that you are picking people who are going to tell someone what they should or shouldn't be reading based on your own judgment. So again, I go back to the ALA is our enemy. They are our enemy, end of story. We cannot allow this organization to run our schools, libraries anymore. They have got to be taken out. So here's an example. So PG-13, and I just took some highlights. There's a lot more to it than this, but some materials inappropriate for children. Some of them think restricted rating. So if you have a mature theme, then it's going to go into a rated R. Oh, imagine that, right? So brief nudity requires PG-13, but it cannot be sexually oriented. So you would just have like a butt going by, but it's not on purpose of sexual. You can have one single use expletive, harsher, sexually derived, so they could only say the F word once in a PG-13 movie. So Me and Earl and the Dying Girl has 113 F words in it. It wouldn't be PG-13, right? Anything with more than one, it would be automatically a rated R movie. And they need to vote by a 2/3 majority for it to get the rating that they feel is necessary. So there is a lot of great regulation around the movies with ratings, and I think that we can follow suit with books as well. Next slide. So why are we getting nowhere? And it's because of this. They don't want the parent involved. They want to pretend like we are not part of the equation. They don't want us to be a part of the equation. I was treated poorly to Bixby. I continue to be. They don't want me around. They don't want me saying anything. I'm known as the pill. I cause all the problems. I find all the problems, and all I do is point them out. I'm not finding problems. They're already there. Nobody already knows about them. I'm just trying to fix them. I'm trying to say, here's a way we can, and I have solutions. I've even said, let's keep talking about this. Why is this ending? They don't want that. So until the parent pillar gets put back up, the school system is not going to get better, and we need to have more and more teachers coming forward, and I wish we had more that would. They just are afraid to. We've really got to if we can get the teacher and the parent on the same page, then we'll win. It's the administration that's the problem. So I think there's a lot of not great teachers, but I think there's more good ones. And like the teacher who spoke earlier, like she said, they're leaving. The good ones are leaving, and this public education system is not going well. It's already failed, so we need to figure out how to fix it, and if it is even fixable at this point. So that's kind of my spiel. Oh, and one more thing I did want to add too on the books, and then you can speak. So we use a.
Everything that she just said, ditto.
So the schools use a Lexile rating system. Okay, and this allows them to know at what equivalent the book would be in, K through 12. So if you're in, for example, 165 to 570 would be a range of first grade reading level, okay? So the book, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, as an example, gets an 820, which is equivalent to a third grade reading level. So they're writing, so this equation, and this is what I told the board, they're writing at a third grade level, but they're writing material that's adult, offered to teenagers whose hormones are raging, and they're confused, and they're making them more confused. Tell me how that is a good equation. It's not. It's causing purposeful separation of parent and child, which is Marxism, and that's what they want to do, is they want to separate the child from the parent. The schools want to be the savior. They want to educate the whole child, and this is all part of it. If they can get a kid, in fact, when Jenny and I went to a meeting, the assistant or the associate superintendent made a comment about the whole child and that they were going to take care of the whole child, and we both laughed, looked at each other, and we said, no, that's not your job. Your job is to teach them. My job is the whole child. And they're not your child, they're my child, they're your student. There's a difference, and know the difference between a child and a student.
Thank you, Janice.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.